The Linn-Mar Board of Directors meeting will be called to order at 5 p.m. in the boardroom of the Learning Resource Center. Can you please take roll to determine a quorum?
Buckholz.
Here.
Morey.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
Rollinger.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Wall.
Here.
And Weaver.
Here.
All Mr. President.
I make a motion to adopt the agenda with a walk-in personnel exhibit.
Second.
A motion by Clark and a second by Melissa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're going to kick off this evening's informational reports with an update from our DEI committee.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Harini. I'm joined by John Kruger, and we're here tonight on behalf of our DE&I committee to give you an update on the activities that we've been doing. The last time we talked to the board, I think, was last March, so we'll recap a few things from last March, but we'll also talk to you about the new things that have happened since that time. So with that picture is also old. We are now, John will give some of the stats of who we are now and how many we're up to, but so really, first of all, setting the context to why this committee exists, right? It goes back to the community, the school district plan that the board of directors actually created, right? And we really wanted to highlight, it's hard to read, it's small up here in the chart, but there is a little section there that talks out in our diversity, in our plan, that diversity and inclusion is important. And what's really, if you read those words, it's important for employees and students to feel that they can be themselves and they make meaningful contributions and benefit from differing perspectives, right? And that's really, something that I think holds true to our committee, and we want to make sure that we help provide recommendations that help make Linn-Mar that district and help us execute that action plan. We also wanted to say, again, thank you to the board last year for that statement on diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Especially with everything that's been happening in our community, and really saying that there is no place for anyone to feel harassed or marginalized due to anything related to race, gender, orientation, or beliefs. So we do, again, want to reiterate that we do believe, our committee believes, and we know many of you here in our community and our school board, that every student feels welcome and respected at Linn-Mar.
All right, cool. And I'm John Krieger. So our committee was reinvigorated in September 2021. We have partnerships with the Marion Alliance for Racial Equity, Marion Civil Rights Commission, and District DEIE consultants. The committee composition by the numbers, so we're at 20 members right now, 11 parents, 3 Linn-Mar staff, 3 community members, 1 student, 2 non-voting members. We got various opinions and values and representation on the board. For example, I'm first and foremost, I consider myself, I'm a Christian, I'm a father and a husband, and I'm also very conservative. And so maybe not like typically someone you'd see on the DEI, but I was approached to join it and to get some various opinions on the board. And I readily admit, even in the committee, that I'm not going to necessarily agree with everything that the committee might go collectively with, but it exists and it's definitely having an impact on the district. And I'm more than happy to represent my values and views that I deeply care about. So I'm glad to be a part of the committee. So what the committee's done so far, it's developed some committee bylaws and themes. We developed, conducted, and analyzed the school climate survey. That's a complement to the conditions of learning survey, so we really dove into that data. As part of elevating the student voice, we actually held focus groups, which we'll discuss in a future slide, to understand the school climate survey data better. We reviewed what's been a student-led bullying and microaggression reporting form that's actually being piloted at the high school level right now, an anonymous reporting form. So we reviewed that as a committee. Also increased the size and representation. Speaking to the 20 members we are now, we've got voices representing special needs, Compass staff, and more.
And thank you also to our board members. I know I had coffee with Matt a couple times, and to help us identify maybe where we had some of those gaps in representation, because we want our committee to represent our district, right? We don't want just one voice or one view. We really want to make sure our committee had representation from all of those areas. So thank you, especially to Matt, for helping us identify a few great new members. Our new members have been awesome, by the way. So It's a really committed group. We meet for an hour and a half once a month, and we always run long. It's like we have conversations, and then we're all sitting around after the meeting having more conversations about what we can do. So it's a really engaged and passionate group. So just again, a reminder of our committee themes. I'm not going to read through these. I talked through these last time. We do also have on the district website, you'll see at the end too, a link where you can find all of this information. And then just a reminder too, last year we presented the school climate survey report. And again, there is on the school district website, you can go find that and download that if you're not aware of that report and haven't yet read it. There's a lot of data in it. It's like an 80-page report with a lot of information. But I did pull out one part of that report because it was a large area of focus for our committee, and you'll see upcoming in the recommendations, you'll see a lot related to bullying and students feeling like they're treated with respect. That's an area that we're really going to focus on in our recommendations and our committee actions going forward. So, as you can see, 1 in 5 students reported personally being bullied, and 2 in 5 students have seen someone else bullied, right? So, and just over 50% of students say that they actually favorably say that we are respecting each other's differences. And so that's a number that we want to change and improve. John?
Yeah, so as mentioned earlier, earlier this year we did conduct a bunch of focus groups revolving around the bullying and also the restorative justice disciplinary kind of fashion. We've met with both parent groups, we've met with a couple of groups in the middle school and a couple of groups in the high school. I was able to sit in on 2 of them, help take notes. It was really cool, not only to listen to the students, we presented them data and then really was like, what do you think of this data? So there was, them trying to understand the data, then them just going in whatever direction they wanted to go. We really did not guide the focus group. We really just let them talk about what they wanted to talk about. What I found really interesting was that there was themes across the groups, but also you got to hear various opinions, right? So you were listening to various groups from different backgrounds, and so you weren't just listening to one group, you were listening to different groups and kind of piecing that together and trying to detect what the themes were. That was pretty cool.
All right, so we're going to talk about 4 different goal areas that our committee is forming around. Here you'll see some committee recommendations. Some of these recommendations will be for you as a board to consider. Some of them will be things for us as a committee to continue to work on, and some of these recommendations came from our consultants who are over here as well, who have been great collaborators with our committee. So the first goal really comes around restorative conversations and practices. And so what this means, right, is, when something like bullying happens, how do we help make that a teaching moment? How do we prevent that from happening again in the future, right? So first of all, the first recommendation for our committee is really how do we continue that staff development so that staff knows how to proactively engage with students and through that culturally responsive lens, right, is what we mean there too. So for example, if you see something, how do you behave so it's consistent from classroom to classroom? One thing that we heard from our focus group students is like, hey, I go to this classroom and I can get away with using my phone. I go to this classroom and the teacher's really strict. We need more discipline. We actually want more discipline from our teachers because those classrooms, people are more well-behaved and we can have a better learning environment. So how do we make that more consistent from classroom to classroom? So one way through doing that is more professional development. The second area too is what is restorative justice, period, right? We found this as a term that maybe had a lot of people that didn't understand the definition. And so we want to have that training and an understanding of those definitions to our students and staff. The third area we talked about here too is how can we have more interventions, not just for our older students in the high school, but actually the younger students as well. So, programs today like Compass are only available to our older students. Are those, types of interventions and solutions available younger to help those kids that need just a different learning environment to succeed? And then lastly is clearly posted consistent expectations for student behavior. Another thing from our focus groups is that students weren't always aware of the rules. So how can we just make sure in the buildings, especially the behaviors that we really want to reinforce in the district, there's just clearly posted signs with what's expected by the students. In addition to our committee recommendations on this one, our consultants also recommend some additional professional development for our district leadership and board on those same topics. Goal number 2 is around creating that culture of belonging and respect. So we want to continue to collect data in this area. One of the things, like we mentioned, the high school students have piloted a anonymous reporting form. What data can we learn from that? As we see the data coming in and what types of incidents are being reported, what actions can we take as a committee to help provide recommendations? There's also a lot of school bullying data across other platforms and best practices of how to support students and staff. So that's something that our committee will do and help provide future recommendations to the board. We also want to design a collaborative process that defines school culture and just even terminology, right? That's another area that we talked about as a committee is sometimes, terms, we may not be on the same page or definition when we're talking about certain terms. So how can we make those terms available and that we can all point to the same common reference? We also want to use our communication resources to really promote the anti-bullying messages and also to make sure students are aware of the resources available to them. And finally, that increased access to mental resources, but making sure parents are also part of that, where they can opt in and choose that resource for their students if needed. The consultants additionally are recommending that we provide that professional development for students, staffs, and parents on anti-bullying and bystander training. This would actually be in addition to the training that was developed and delivered to staff in 2020.
So for our third initiative, we've got strengthening community relations. So under the recommendations, we have facilitate dialogue between a diverse group of stakeholders with various opinions on diversity, equity, and inclusion to seek collective understanding and collaborative outcomes. Hold a community forum with board and DEI committee representatives to present findings and have dialogue. Communicate monthly to the district about DEI advisory committee building initiatives and outreach. And then DEI Advisory Committee design and collaborative process to define school culture and bullying, including all necessary key terms. On that first one, kind of facilitating the dialogue, I think it's kind of getting around, so really trying to address some of these elephants in the room, right? So if we have, something kind of dividing the community, where can we actually have the dialogue? A lot of people like to come to the board, myself included sometimes, and that's a great place to be heard, but it's not a great place to dialogue just because that's the nature of the board meeting and how that's going to be had. So where can these dialogues take place? And what I'm a huge advocate for is that it has to happen face-to-face somehow, right? I think we all can tell that we're not agreeing with each other on social media and to those types of formats. It just doesn't seem to get people to agree with each other. So how can we call it a neutral ground where we can, address some of the elephants in the room, talk it out, not necessarily maybe come to an agreement, that would be great, but at least get clarity, learn to put faces to names. I can personally advocate for, having since been in the DEI committee, everyone's very nice, very rational. We have, I find myself agreeing with a lot of the opinions and sentiments in the meetings that we're having discussions about. There's obviously points of disagreement, but, the face-to-face can maybe allow that 85% of the stuff we agree on to progress and not hold up everything because of the small issues we disagree on, which I'm not going to say they're small, some of them are big, but as a collective, right? So it's like this face-to-face dialogue, obviously there's a lot of hashing out there to do. Our recommendation, there'll be forthcoming on that, but, could fall on its face, but the alternative doesn't seem to be any better, so. And then the consultant recommendations, create DEI engagement framework to increase family-school partnerships and provide mentoring opportunities, which kind of builds on that as well. And then finally, continue data analysis. So our committee recommendations are to continue to review conditions of learning reports and climate assessment data to understand impact of implemented strategies. Analyze the high school anonymous reporting form data. It's anonymized data coming to us. It's not any PII stuff. Analyze any disciplinary data, and then the DEI committee to analyze, research, collect data about social media and its impact related to bullying and the culture of a school. This one, kind of a personal one that I really hold close and dear is to try to figure out what's going on with this social media stuff. I was kind of shocked with a lot of you, maybe if you saw the CDC report that came out earlier, this year that reported 30% of teen girls surveyed indicated that they've seriously considered suicide, which is a 57% increase since 2011. So obviously we have a mental health crisis going on. That 90-page report from the CDC didn't mention social media, but come on May 23rd, just a couple of weeks ago, the U.S. Surgeon General did issue a new advisory about effects social media use has on youth and mental health. Just a couple of quotes from his article from his statement. is there's a growing evidence that social media use is associated with harm to young people's mental health. Another quote, social media may also perpetuate body dissatisfaction, disordered eating behaviors, social comparison, low self-esteem, especially among adolescent girls, which kind of speaks to that stat that came from the CDC earlier. He then went on to say, we're in the middle of a national youth mental health crisis, and I am concerned that social media is an important driver of that crisis, one that we must urgently address. So he then cited well over 100 sources, NIH, lots of universities. They are suggesting that social media has, quote, detrimental impact on school performance, quote, makes students hypersensitive to feedback from peers. That one kind of jumped out to me specifically when we're talking about bullying. If students are more hypersensitive to feedback, they might perceive more bullying happening. Could have long-standing and important consequences for adolescents' neurodevelopment and can make mental health disorders such as anxiety, depression, ADHD, and body dysmorphia worse. So social media is not good, at least from that data. So, me personally, while the school may not be able to ban social media outside of the classroom, I'm not representing the DEI here, but personally I would love to see the DEI committee present compelling data to the district that would convince the district to revisit their mobile policies on campus, as well as their approach to educating our students so that they are aware, at the very least, they're aware of the effects that social media usage is having on them, similar to how we educate our children the effects drugs have on them. The school's job is education, so where does that fit in with this apparent mental health crisis we're having with our students?
All right. And then the last slide here is just, again, a reminder of how to stay connected with us. So back to the district website, if you go to the community, there's a tab for diversity, equity, inclusion. There you can actually apply to join our committee, so we are always accepting new members, and we really value anyone who's passionate about this work and wants to join us in those 4 initiative areas. And if you have any questions, you can just send an email to equity@linn-mar.k12.ia.us, and you can reach us that way as well. Any questions for us?
I want to thank you. We've been waiting for this patiently, not patiently, to hear how the survey and the focus groups and how you were all putting it together. And so I just want to say thank you for this work, because this is something that we can talk about and have further discussion around. And that's, I think, what we've been waiting for. So thank you so much.
I have a couple things.
Yeah, sure.
First of all, thank you so much for all of your hard work. I know that this has been many, many months in the works, and lots of time and effort that's gone into that. So I'm really excited to get to the point of seeing all of that come to fruition in the results or the recommendations. I know that was sort of your end goal of the first phase of this, and then the implementation begins. And so excited to see where we're at. One question for you, particularly around goal 1, but maybe it slides into a couple of the others, is did the committee have any discussion around, as a recommendation, and implementation of policies and procedures for these things that might help with sustainability and accountability for professional development and addressing behaviors, and how we as a district do those things? Because those are, if they're not put into policies and procedures, then they all become so individualized. And if we're training some people in this and other people in that, then how do we institutionalize our learning? And so I'm just curious if that had been a discussion at the table, and what the
Yes.
committee's recommendations are for that.
We have talked about that, but I think that was part of our thing too, was like, do we need to understand as a committee what the policies are today, and then what recommendations will we make to actually go change them, right? And so I think we're still at the data collection phase of, okay, what is happening across other districts? And again, we look at our consultants a lot. We know from a couple things, right, like Linn-Mar is ahead of other districts in terms of even doing these surveys and getting this data. So we're one step ahead of some of the other districts having a committee like this, so they're actually making that. But again, so then there's less people to go survey. Well, what are their policies and procedures as it relates to things like restorative justice, right? Because again, we know like that's a specific way that you, if someone commits an offense, right, that breaks a school rule, here's the consequence, right? And we're not saying get rid of consequences, but that's another thing that we did talk about as a committee, right? Like depending on the severity of the infraction, you still have to take consequential action, right? But we also are saying there's opportunities for those lower, infractions for kids to learn from it. And that's the part what we would probably need to like write into a policy, like what's that threshold? And one of those, make it really black and white so that kids don't want to understand, parents don't understand, the community knows and understands, and the teachers, right? That the faculty know and understand. So, yes, we have talked about that. No, we don't have a specific recommendation today. I don't know. I'm looking at Kingston and Kingsley, sorry, and Sarka. Yeah. Anthony. I think
Yeah, I think just to echo the comments made, I think, right now it's about the socialization of what we've learned and how we have a better understanding of what the school culture is in Linn-Mar, not only from the data from the focus groups, but also the implementation of some of the professional development. I think from that implements policy work, right? Because we always want to be sustainable. We as consultants don't want to consult forever, right? It doesn't make any sense. And so that's a part of, I would say if you break it into phase, that'd be phase 4. So phase 3 is the implementation of a lot of the professional development, a lot of discussion from the board standpoint, and also the community standpoint, is how we move forward. But then it's how do we make sure it's sustainable? How do we all walk away from this and say, hey, we actually have something that we can look at, not only moving forward, but that could be also a model for other districts as well. And I want to also echo Jessica's comments about the fact that this is transformative work. I mean, I want to give you kudos, not only the committee, the board, but also Nathan as far as the work that's happening in this regard. It doesn't happen in this particular way with the varied perspectives that we've presented here tonight as far as wanting to move forward, not just in one way, but in a way that really speaks to not only all kids, but all perspectives as well.
I was going to say, I just want to echo something that, thank you so much for being part of our committee. I think one of the things that we really, we want to address the elephants in our community, in our district. That also means that when we have diversity of thought, that's diversity of political ideologies. It's vital to have all perspectives being part of our cultural transformation. And so I really, really commend the DEI committee to really tap folks to be part of it so that we can get to that unity. It's a long journey, but it's so vital that we model the way for our students and our colleagues and our community. So I'm very, very impressed with what your DEI committee has done with being very inclusive in the perspectives.
I guess I would just add to that, and I would agree. This is a human-centered process. This is not something that you can always look at a spreadsheet and say that we accomplished A or B or C. And so because of that, as Kingsley was saying, a lot of this human-centered work that has to happen at a time, you can put all the policies and procedures in place you want. I'm sure you've got people that are really good at that. But that's not going to change mindsets without having those human-centered professional development opportunities. So that's why that really needs to, we would highly recommend that be the next step, is how do we do that? What does that look like? So, that answers.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd like to first say thank you to you and the entire group, but also for the shout out of, saying that we got together for coffee, and we did have some really good conversations. I do need to apologize a little bit because that should have been me taking that first step, but you did, and I truly appreciate it because I think it has made a difference, in smaller circles, into larger circles, starting those conversations. And like John said, having those face-to-face interactions with people of different viewpoints really does show more that we have more in common than we have, our differences. So again, I appreciate you for reaching out and doing that, and introducing me to some of the other people on the committee that I've had some good conversations with. I do really, the part that I really looking forward to see is some of those that I think will take this to another level, is defining some of those terms. I think that's going to be a huge part in moving everything forward. Sometimes terms get politicized so that when it means one thing to a group, it means completely something different to another group. So getting those terms defined to where we're using them across the board in the district, I think is going to be key to making all of this move forward. So, thank you.
It's just one of those things, it's another thank you, but as Britt said, been waiting for something like this, but until you presented it, I did not understand just how much work has gone into it by everybody, and the surveys and stuff. So it's not, hey, we're just gonna talk about this, you guys are doing it. And going through the recommendations is tremendous, but you're not just stopping there. Hey, we broke some ice, now and I'll use your word, sir, we're moving forward, and this whole board has always, that one of our purposes is to keep moving forward. And that mental health part is so crucial with a diverse group that we have now compared to when I was teaching, okay? And this bullying and the mental health that goes on, hey, it just doesn't stay at the school. It comes home also. And parents worry what's going on and getting the true picture. And I think having things, pardon me, on the doorway coming in. Hey, these are class expectations, and guess what? They're the same as there are in English and Spanish and French and math and everything else like that, who they can go to for help, you know? And hey, we're just like I said, we're breaking the iceberg, but we're going, you guys are going in such a fantastic direction. You know, bless you. It's what our students need, it's what our parents need, it's what our district needs, is all of us working together for the betterment of our students and district. Thank you.
I just have one comment. Of course, thank you for what you guys have been up to the last couple years. Melissa, you talked about you know, what policy recommendations we can make, and one of the things that came up last time at the last meeting, we were talking about the CDC report, the Surgeon General's report, and I just think it would be a good opportunity to bring up our cell phone use policy. What we had heard in the past, the feedback we had received was, you know, that kids were using that to engage in things in class, you know, they needed to look something up. But now that we are a one-to-one district, I think we have a real opportunity to relook at that policy and see, I think they're a real distraction, but I think for all the reasons that John brought up, that it's something that we should seriously look at this coming year.
Jessica, John, I appreciate the work you've done to come tonight to present, and I really appreciate the end product you're sharing tonight. Not that that's the end result, but to this point anyway, in the format you've provided, because there's some really strong recommendations and pieces for us to look at as a board, but also as an administrative team as we plan professional development and review policy going forward too. So I like the end result, but I also know that this has not been an easy process to get here. There's a lot of that forming process and storming as a group, that whole group dynamic piece is taking a while to get here. So if your leadership to continue to work through this on a volunteer committee is very much appreciated and very admirable. So thank you for doing that. And Anthony, Sarika, Kingsley, appreciate your guidance in this process as well. I think back to Sarika and I's first conversation 7-8 years ago, we were nowhere near at this point, now we're close. We wouldn't be here without your guys' support and guidance on that piece as well too. So, so excited to see where this goes. I think we've got a great foundation set, and your recommendations will be very helpful as we reflect and think this piece through. And the timing of this is perfect as we wrap up a school year and begin to plan for next year as well too. So, so just again, thank you, like you said, but also just the format you presented things is very workable for us as a end result that you're providing for us at this stage.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Right. Next up, we have Vicki from OPN with a construction update for the performance venue.
As Vicki gets set up, just a quick context for you, board members, just to remember, We've been working on the auditorium performance venue for quite a while. The last update I gave you was just a very simple summary that we made some changes, reviewed things with OPN. I think now's a good time to see more of those specifics, as well as what things look like as well. So appreciate Vicky's willingness to come give us that update tonight. And we were excited as an administrative and high school team. We saw the revisions they had made based on our feedback to help us stay on track with the design, but also with the budget. So I'm excited for her to share that with you tonight as well. So.
Yeah, thanks for having me here tonight. What an eventful day to be here with the groundbreaking at the admin building. And of course, Shannon, I don't know, I'm going to miss seeing you at these things, I think.
You get to see me tomorrow, so don't get too excited yet. Time's not over yet.
Like Shannon said, we're going to talk a little bit about design updates and phasing dates. So back in October, we left you with a floor plan that looked like this. Kind of hard to see, but in the general, you know the general idea of where we were, what we thought about. And we did a pricing exercise, and we all went, oh, oops, uh-oh, COVID hit us. Construction, we know what happened with construction dollars. You've seen it in some of the bids and the projects you've been doing. So we right away started looking at spaces. We've tried to really be intentional about looking at spaces without compromising program. We knew what's important, and this addition, this space has been talked about for so many years at Linn-Mar, and it's so needed. You guys have amazing fine arts programs. So we started to concentrate on some of these areas, this outdoor area, this long connecting area, maybe some overextension here, kind of this balcony area, and maybe even a sliver through the hall without compromising the seating of 1,200, which is our goal. So as we did that, we came up with a plan we're all really pretty excited about, and if you're on the building committee, you've seen this, and we're pretty excited because we've reduced some spaces. We've cut out a sliver of the hall, still maintaining the 1,200 plus seats. We've reduced some of this extra connection, which we feel actually is going to function as well or better for feeding performances and events through the back of the house. We have kept this entrance so that people can use that north parking and still access the space very easily, either here or through this other entrance. We're considering a couple entry points at this point, either through this westernmost north entrance or right through Pride Rock. We're exploring both of those right now and seeing what might be best. This could become its own performing arts entrance that could enter straight into the space and then access that pre-function space for all three performance venues. So we're pretty excited. But what we haven't compromised was something we heard loud and clear was access for the rehearsal spaces to the house. So we looked, there's a big storage room here. We think we've identified a route that will allow those groups to bypass and not build all this extra space, which will save us quite a bit of money. So we're quite excited about that. As we look at the exterior, this is where we left off, and you'll see that we had these banners of red. We had some interesting shapes going along with these banners of red. So this is the last rendering that you saw was where we landed at schematic design, and we all know that schematic design we're getting close, but we haven't finalized some of those things, the final designs. So this is where we are now. We've simplified the exterior, but we've kept those main elements that were really attractive to you, those red bands that will provide that continuity all the way from the red entranceway over by athletics, around the building, around 10th Street, and then back and around to the north to that potential fine arts entry. So we're excited about that. We've kept that opening to that kind of pre-function space to really give that volume and excitement. If you look at it from the south corner, you can kind of look up at it. So we're pretty excited about this. We have
It's 10th Street, right?
This is 10th Street
Okay.
we're standing on, yep. And this is a little bit closer. We're seeing some patterning between brick and windows to allow some daylight into that circulation space as people enter. This, you kind of are moving a little bit further up 10th Street, and you see that kind of neat glass volume. This is really not an entrance. This is really an emergency exit, but it provides glass that kind of lights up what's happening on an event where you've activated 1, 2, or 3 of your performance venues. And then here would be looking from the northwest corner. And so you can see that red band is wrapping all the way around and kind of encircling that whole fine arts area. This is that entry that potentially could be your fine arts entry if we decide not to use Pride Rock. That's still in development and happening during this design development period that we're in right now. And this is what that could look like. We actually have 2 or 3, that's what Shannon was talking about. They're going to see 2 or 3 more different options for how we could really punch this space as a fine arts entry and go straight in to the building. When we first talked to you, these were the 3 projects that were kind of left on that long-range plan that was talked about earlier at the groundbreaking. So we've got the performance venue in design now, the indoor activity center and the high school extension. So basically into this LRC or into this space where the LRC is now are the next 2 projects. Looking at potentially starting that schematic programming part of the indoor activity center somewhere August or September when Amy gets on board and she can dive deep into that with us. What we've tried to do with the schedule with the performance venue is trying to hit that sweet spot for bidding. In doing so, we're going to do a couple things. We're going to try to hit somewhere between late November to early January for bidding, opening bids sometime, hopefully early February, possibly even January, depending upon how things come together. And we are also looking at releasing an August bid package. And as you guys know, when you right now drive up to your Lion, your loop up by your auditorium and your pre-function space, you have this lovely space full of utilities, chock full of utilities. I think nobody would call it beautiful. We're trying to make the best of it as we can. Eventually, all of that stuff will end up down here in a utilities court. Well, a lot of these items are still very long lead times, some of them up to a year. And so what we're looking at doing is releasing an early bid package for some of that mechanical, electrical work, that utility work, getting it started probably around August, sometime early fall, to start to bid that so that we can get things on order, potentially start some of that work this fall or certainly early spring and get a head start basically on getting some of those things ordered. And then releasing the whole project later in the fall, like I said, December-ish, somewhere in that area.
Just a quick question. When you talk about lead time, you're talking about availability of the product, right?
I am. So things like some of the things that are technical, there's switchgear is still got a long lead time. This includes a generator that can have lead times, things that we were seeing. And it's funny because even month to month, those things change. Last fall, things like precast was a year out. That has shrunk, so in some cases it's 4 to 6 months, which is much more tolerable in a schedule. But some of this electrical gear is still in that 11 to 12 month range, and so waiting for that, knowing that that has to move out of the way first, would really hinder our schedule. And I said it would be short and sweet, and that's what it is.
You didn't lie.
Yeah, again, we are in that schematic. We finished schematic design. We're in that design development phase. We plan to take that out for costing in July, and we hope to be back to you in August to give you a cost update. That's our next big target.
A question, and you went back right to the right slide. So you said this isn't an entrance, it's an emergent, so I thought that we were going to put the entrance there.
We were going to originally, but when you look at the, I don't think I have a really great site plan. When you think about, you have parking over here, and you have large parking here for events. So really, we anticipate most of the event parking will be here. And rather than having people come here, this is very close to the drive. We think for safety reasons and for parking and access reasons, entering the primary entrance being here would probably be better.
That's how they use it now.
Yep. And so what we thought too is when you host events, so say you're going to do a show choir event or large group, that parking lot to the south down in this area would be optimal, where you could block off some area, have trucks actually veer around off of south of the LRC coming in and coming up, or vice versa, coming off 10th Street and making a one-way loop. So that's kind of back of house entrance for performing groups entering. So we had originally taken this all the way down and people were going to enter here. This was never going to be a primary entrance. It was going to be an area where originally we had planned it for kind of an outdoor performance spot. So maybe you wanted to have a little mini theater or a little outside amphitheater kind of space. That's originally, you have a lot of grade to work with there. So that was the original thought. So now we still will have people likely coming in and out of there, but it won't be a primary entrance. It'll be more, we have to have it for egress, and then there'll be some area there so that if people need to take a break, maybe you take a group out there because they just need some time. They're hot and sweaty after practicing show choir and they need to go out there for a breather. It might be used for that. But it'll really be, when you see it, it'll be more like, it's just that offers that glass, and it offers it in a way that gives us the egress too.
Is that extra glass a design element,
here?
or is it, yes, or is
It
that
is
a requirement?
It is not a requirement, it's
Okay.
a design element. So it's one of the things we heard early on from all the stakeholder groups, including the board, was making this 10th Street a wow space. And so we tried to be conservative, and actually the design that we've done here, we think we've cut an additional $2 million out of our project cost, which is a good thing we needed to do from our September pricing. We've cut down some of the glass here, thanks to Dave. Dave said, that's still too much glass. So we cut down a ton of glass here. We've tried to maintain this because it really will be a beacon for your high school as you drive by. This is what people are going to see. So it offers that lit up space with some cool lighting. And
Can you go back to the slide you were on before here?
this one?
Nope,
Plan one?
the floor plan. Is there an entrance, because I don't see any, is there an entrance
So
there?
Yes, there's
On
going
that
to be-
side?
There's an entrance here, so if people park down here, they will be able to get in this
Okay,
direction. And
okay.
then this direction will be so you're bringing in your props or your
Yep.
set or whatever.
Yep.
They'll be able to come in here,
Okay.
and there'll be a back entrance to the
Okay.
house. Or
So
to the
people
stage.
will be able to access that if they park?
They can access right here if they park down to the south, and then primary access would be here if you park to the north.
Perfect.
Where I was going was, I was like, I always park on that end, so I figured I'd walk through
Nope.
that new no door.
Nope,
But then
you
you said
can-
it wasn't a door.
You can come in right here.
So, okay.
And the nice thing too about, one of the things is there's restrooms right here, and those restrooms right now, they could use some love, and they could use some updating. And so what we see is taking those, and it will help with our restroom counts too, our fixture counts. So we see this as a real branding opportunity. Like they come in here, cleaning up this hallway and seeing something here in the end that somehow brings them to the fine arts or the performance venues or however that might be named or looked at. So we see some really great opportunities for this connection. During events, these restrooms will be used, these restrooms will be used. We're also planning for a couple single-use family restrooms in this area. So we're continuing to update this. Those restrooms will be nice because they'll also help serve our storm shelter, which is kind of in this area. Good questions.
What I like about that plan is that, I know you mentioned you're considering Pride Rock, but like fine arts families now are used to going in that music hallway. So the design fits how people are used to using the space and just enhances what they're, like how it's already used. So I do like that aspect of it. I don't think you're gonna retrain everybody to suddenly go all the way around to Pride Rock and then cut back over. I think they're gonna keep using that doorway that they like to use.
Yeah, and we were having a lot of conversations about it because that Pride Rock area is used for some other pre-function spaces, not beyond just this space that will be. I think this is going to be a great space. But they can always navigate that way to and from. So say there's an intermission and you want to do something down here, then you always have the ability to navigate there. But this would just be a really nice direct and easy access from the parking. So we're excited about that. There's some things along this hallway we'd like to clean up. We also, with our fixture counts, we're going to have to use these restrooms as part of our fixture counts. So the restrooms here and the and the single-use family restrooms here will all be part of that count. And so we're still verifying a lot of that, but this is where we are today, and we're pretty excited about where we've come without compromising, like I said, program and actually enhancing the way this all comes together. It's great.
It's awesome.
Appreciate the flexibility, the responsiveness they had to our questions, and from design aspect, but also the budget aspect as well. And we're really pleased that, like Vicki said, we still feel like the priority pieces we had are still intact,
Yes.
but with a much better budget range that we anticipate in the next update. So,
Awesome. Well, thank you guys very much, and we'll see
Thanks,
you.
Courtney.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, next up is Marion City Council. That was me. So they are rezoning some agriculture residential single-family homes over off of East Robbins Road in Alburnett. So that will feed into that ever-growing area over there. The only other thing that was on the agenda that particularly pertained to us is that they approved our homecoming parade route. So for those wanting to mark the calendar, it's going to be September 13th. So the parade was approved. That was really all on the agenda for us.
or float.
Barry just volunteered
himself.
to be in charge of the float committee, so you let us know how that goes. I will bring the candy to throw.
Deal.
You got the rest of it. So, all right, next up is Shannon's report.
Yeah, just a few things as we wrapped up the year, and that's kind of where I'll start. End of the school year went really well. From graduation of 540 students, as you guys were all there to enjoy. Really well-run and fun event. And then the last 2 days of school finished up well as well. So really, it's always nice to start a year in a positive light, and it's always nice to end the year in a positive frame, and I think we were successful in that regard. Construction, you just heard about auditorium from Vicki, so I won't go through all that update. She did a much better job than I would. The administration building, you're well aware, groundbreaking today. You got your shoes all dusty and got to throw a little dirt, but that project is off and running now, so that's exciting. And the other two projects, if you did notice as you came back from the groundbreaking, the high school parking lot, stadium parking lot area is really taking off a lot as well. I don't know about you, but I was shocked when I saw how much dirt they have moved and how deep that area to the north towards Excelsior, that's going to have a whole different look to it as well. So good to see that project off and running. And then the tennis courts, if you haven't driven out there yet, please do. It is a whole different look to it out there. There's poles everywhere, it feels like, because none of the fences are up yet, but the poles all are, including the lights. And you can start to see the shape of the tennis courts, the 8 courts with the 4 with the lights as well. And I think that's going to be a great addition to that area. They were pouring cement today in that area, and I'm not sure how many days that'll take them. Dave's telling me 2, so 2 days for that process. And then a reminder after that, I'll take a break, because it takes 28 days for that cement to cure before they put the tennis surface down. So all 4 projects off and running, and in a good spot on those, I think, and hopefully the weather continues to be cooperative, because they have had ideal weather to keep things moving right now.
Had some extra time for dinner the other night, and so I was eating at Barrel House, and so I went over and checked out the tennis courts, and you're right, it went from like a field and then some dirt, and now there's just poles, and it's just very impressive. So there's a lot going on over there, but it looks good. So.
It does. They've done a great job. So one thing I do want to talk about, transportation for next year, some plans. We did send letters out to families that were impacted by the transportation changes that we're making. And some of you probably heard from some family members concerned with that, and just a quick update for you. Just a reminder, as we were going through the budget process, one item we did look at was reducing some areas where we are not required to provide transportation by Iowa law, and making some adjustments in our routes. Primarily, the areas we're talking about are south of 29th Avenue for our students at Boulder Peak, and a little bit of Excelsior as well. Due to budget cuts, and honestly, probably more so due to the fact of just driver shortages, need to eliminate some routes. Obviously, people don't like to lose their transportation services, partly out of convenience, but also out of necessity of getting kids to and from school. We certainly understand that. So we sent the letters out right near the end of the school year. Once you're able to confirm which families would be no longer offered those services. We've heard quite a bit of feedback from some people, which we expected. We've had some really good conversations back and forth with some folks and got some good feedback on some things that has us considering a couple of different possibilities there yet. I don't want to get into any specifics because I don't want to make a promise out loud to the board that we can't keep, but we're looking at a couple different scenarios of ways that we can potentially find kind of a compromise there a little bit with some spots. So we've heard people. Dave, Brian, and I have been kind of contemplating a couple options, and we'll continue doing that. Brian's actually running a couple of scenarios now to see if we make some changes, do we still get some cost savings, and what's the driver impact as well too. So over the course of the next couple of weeks, we'll continue that work. And then also along those same lines, Bob Reed's been serving on the Safe Routes to Schools committee in the area. We're hoping to have them come tonight to present to the school board on their updated plans, which directly connect to that area. They're not quite to that point yet, so we anticipate the July board meeting we will hear an update from that committee and Bob as far as some other ideas as well from the Safe Routes to School, from whether it be walking school buses or where best spots for crosswalks or crossing guards or those type of things as well to work with families. So I think between those two pieces we'll be able to address some of the concerns and still make the impact that we needed to from a budget and staffing perspective too. So stay tuned on that front. Still some work to do there. I just want to throw one congratulations out there. You have several things in your update like we always do. We had one former Linn-Mar student athlete, Jay Hutchison, I believe her married name is Lab now, is going to be inducted into the Iowa Girls High School Athletic Association's Softball Hall of Fame. So great honor for Jay as a Linn-Mar alum. She's all-state pitcher for the Lions and continued that career at UNI. So congratulations to Jay. And then I'd just like to also commend Amy. She's sitting over in the corner, hiding back there quietly one last time, but just for her commitment in this transition process, to being here as much as she has and to do the preparation as much as she's been able to do while she still has a full-time commitment in Iowa City. So I know she hates me probably saying that, but I do want to commend her for that. It's really, I think this helps ease that whole transition process along. I feel better knowing that things are in good hands and this transition, like we talked about way back in December, is kind of playing out the way we hoped it would. So that's been great. And she's here the rest of this week as well, so that will continue. So, and then finally, just on a personal note, to take a second to say thanks for everything. I could go on for hours. I could pull a Clark Weaver here at a banquet and keep talking. Sorry, Clark, I couldn't resist that one. I sat through a couple of those with my kids, and you talk about it, so I couldn't resist that.
That was better than what you said that one time as you introduced me. Yeah, Clark's been here 110 years.
That wasn't too far off. So,
I feel like I should move out of the way. You guys are.
No, that's it. But I won't pull Clark Weaver. Just want to keep it very short and sweet, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say something. But this has been a great place for the last 20 years for me and my family. And I told staff the best decision we've ever made is moving here, personally and professionally, and I still 100% agree with that piece of it too. So thanks for everybody. This is a community that cares deeply about the kids, whether it's their kids, the school kids, or the community as well, and that shows through in everything, every part of the district. So that's been great to serve here in that role. So even though I transitioned to a different role now of grandpa and retirement, I will still be your biggest supporters and fans in any way possible, as long as it doesn't involve me volunteering for anything right away. In a few months maybe, but not right away. So, but again, thank you. It's been an honor to serve here and work here, and just fabulous people. So Diane and I were staying in the area. We love this area, love the community. We're not going anywhere. So look forward to continue to watch future success, as Clark mentioned earlier, looking forward to everything too. So thank you. That's all I have.
I think that's a great segue to making the motion to table Shannon's retirement for this legislature and just keeping him on as Amy's assistant. No.
We can talk about that.
Moving on to new business.
Make a motion to approve a 3% total package increase for the Linn-Mar Service Association for fiscal year 2023-2024.
Second.
A motion by Barry and a second by Melissa. Any discussion? Is there anything you'd like to say?
No, the only thing I guess I would add is this does wrap up our negotiations process for the school year with all of our groups, and it's nice to get that process wrapped up in a healthy manner for us, so, and within budget.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Make a motion to update the 2023-24 school calendar, professional development, and teacher workdays as presented.
Second.
Motion by Rachel and a second by Sandra. Any discussion?
We'll just add the changes for this, for those who aren't aware, strictly affect staff days, not student days from the original calendar, just to make a couple adjustments based on our negotiations process. So student days, start days, end days, everything else are exactly the same.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, I move to approve the open enrollment request as presented.
Second.
Motion by Clark and a second by Melissa. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to approve the consent agenda with a walk-in personnel exhibit.
Second.
Motion by Melissa and a second by Rachel. Any discussion?
Spell out who that walk-in is.
It is the Westfield principal, whose name is escaping me at the moment. I
Scott
apologize.
Filner.
Filner, thank you.
I just thought we needed to mention it, yeah.
Like I said to board members, I do not like to do walk-ins. I like to have things done ahead of time, but sometimes the process of hiring just doesn't work exactly like our board meeting timing process. So I've got things taken care of over the weekend and today, so I appreciate your flexibility to be able to add that because the next board meeting isn't for a little while yet.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and that gets us to the board calendar. And we have the next two city council meetings are covered. Our next board meeting is not until July 10th. And then we do have our first board retreat with Amy on July 25th, beginning at 2 o'clock. We will figure out where that's going to take place by the next board meeting. But thank you all for participating in the doodle poll and helping to get that on the calendar. And I know there's been some questions about what that day might look like. So I talked with Amy. This is really something that she, if you remember, she gave us her 100-day entry plan and things that she kind of wants to do. And part of that is this time with the board to work on building norms and our working relationship and how we want to communicate and establishing, getting to know one another in a way that isn't a board meeting. So she would like to bring in ISB to facilitate part of that discussion. They have some activities and things that help us establish what those working norms will be as a group. And then the second part of that retreat would be working on the strategic plan as a group.
Do we know who they bring in for that?
It would be Tammy Drawbaugh.
Is that similar to, I feel like we've had them in a couple of times, and I have not, quite frankly, been super impressed. I didn't find that super helpful, and I remember hearing some similar feedback from other board members, so I'm just curious how that might differ from the
Again.
couple of times we've done that in the past.
That was before I joined the board. They haven't, so I can't.
I still think all in all, it's a very good process. We get out of it what we want to get out of it, and it works forward, moving forward. I don't disagree with you because I've been involved with some of those, but I still think this is an important piece of us moving forward with this along with the strategic plan. Or that's my
Topic is
thoughts
good.
anyway.
I'm questioning whether or not anybody has seen this specific presenter or presentation to know if this is what we're looking for. Amy, have you had any experience with this specific presentation or presenter to know that this is what you want specifically?
Not necessarily the presenter, but a few months ago, ISD came in and did something similar with the board and the city around certain things, and I think they felt it was effective.
Okay. Okay.
We need to
That's what
keep,
I
so we need to
would be
keep an
looking
open mind if we can, yeah.
I have had conversations with Tammy, and have watched her at other ISB events, and I have thought that she's done a very good job. So I don't know that she has been at ISB long enough to maybe be the person that would have worked with you guys prior, because she was
Worked with her in the past.
on a school board in Muscatine up until recently. So I believe she's a new, not brand new, she's been with ISB for several years, but
How long, we're gonna meet for 4 hours. About how long do you think that piece of it is?
up to 2, and then
Okay.
2 hours on strategic planning.
So
And-
is the
and-
strategic planning different? Are we doing a work session after the board meeting plus the strategic planning during the retreat?
Yes.
Okay,
The idea will be to do a work session in July with cabinet.
on July 10th?
Yes.
Okay.
And then finalize and work through any work that comes from
Okay.
that
So
at the
kind of
retreat.
Finalizing the strategic plan at that retreat, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Okay.
I would like us to get to a point with the plan where we're approving it at the first meeting in August so that the cabinet can move forward with it and the work can happen throughout the school year. That's, in my mind, that's the timeline I'm shooting for. But how we work in these next 2 meetings will determine that.
I feel comfortable supporting that plan, knowing that somebody's seen the presentation, somebody's seen the presenter, and talked with it. That was my main question around it was, do we have confidence in the material? Because the last presentation or training that we did from IASB, that we did as a board, was more of the like virtual one, and I didn't feel like that was a great use of our time, and so I think that was more, that was a different type of training,
Yes.
obviously. But that's my impression now of ISB trainings, and so I just wanted to make sure that we had some time
I
to
will say-
discuss that.
I've participated in, I mean, we've all done the conference, but I have stayed the last 2 years in this position. I have done the President's Conference, and both of those have been incredibly well-run, very helpful discussions, and I've come back with just an overwhelming amount of notes and things to consider. So I think of that as opposed to me taking their board table, read these questions. Yeah, that's very different.
Okay.
Is everyone comfortable with that? We will continue working on the agenda and have something much more concrete once Amy officially starts and is here, and we'll talk about that in July as well. But
Just a quick question.
Yes.
On July 10th, when we do that strategic planning in the work session, do you have an idea of how long you expect that to take, or do you want it to take?
conversation, and she has some really good ideas, and we will probably put a time cap on it, so it will not be an infinite meeting.
Okay.
But yeah, Amy's got some things that she wants to think about. I've shared a lot of the strategic planning like all the versions we've gone through. She has seen some of it, so she has some thoughts, and so she's gonna work through that and kind of try and get where we're all at in the process, because she hasn't been at all of the meetings. And then she wants to have a meeting first week of July when she starts. She'll have her regular cabinet meeting, and they'll talk as well. So.
All right.
All right. So that's the retreat plan. Any other communications for the board? We will move on to audience communications. All right, at this time, I will call up the speakers in order that they have signed up to the microphone. We'll receive and acknowledge comments, but we will not engage in a dialogue with the speaker because of the set agenda for the meeting. Your remarks are limited to 3 minutes per speaker and should be shared in a respectful manner. Now that I've just said that, I'm going to ask, Tiffany is the first one signed up, but I'm going to ask if you're okay with going last just because of what you want to talk about, because it'll be a great transition. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move Tiffany to the end. Christine Lehman Engeldow.
Hi, my name's Christine Lehman Engeldow, and I'm connected to Linn-Mar through my daughter's a teacher at an elementary school here. I've got 2 grandkids that go to Bowman Woods and Excelsior, and I'm a volunteer at Bowman Woods. Okay, so over 10 years ago, all of us were glued to the news of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shootings. We never wanted to live through such a horrific day again. Sadly, scenes of families waiting to hear the fate of their children outside school buildings have been repeated over and over. Memorials of flowers and candles continue to spring up outside schools as community members gather in disbelief. Parents and guardians look around with increasing fear at the inability to control these events. Since then, Moms Demand Action, Every Town for Gun Sense in America, and Every Town for Gun Safety began to provide resources, research, and programs helping communities organize around the idea of ensuring gun safety. I was a member of Moms Demand Action in Iowa City. I wondered why Cedar Rapids did not have a chapter. Then the Parkland shootings happened. The next day, I volunteered at the school where my daughter teaches art to elementary school children. She had rearranged the classroom so the kids could escape out the windows and had to tell everyone from kindergarten through 5th grade what to do if a bad guy came into the building. I was horrified to hear her tell this to such little children. Then I started the Cedar Rapids area chapter of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. While my feelings are my own, this sentiment is echoed across the country. Nearly half of parents surveyed in the United States worry about their children getting shot. Our national organization developed a 5-step program about gun safety for parents and guardians called Be Smart. This is a movement that is growing across the nation. Districts in many states and even Iowa City have resolved to share the Be Smart message with parents and guardians. Tonight, I would like to urge the Linn-Mar Linn-Mar School District to give parents and guardians a common language and proven strategies that ensure greater safety for all our students and community. We are here tonight to offer our expertise and help ensure that our town takes similar action and never sees a day like we saw at Columbine, Newtown, Parkland, Uvalde, and so many others.
Luann Byerly.
Hello, my name is Luann Byerly. I'm a resident of the district and had a daughter who graduated from Linn-Mar. I'm also a retired teacher and administrator from a different district. And all of those things are why I think this is so important. The impact of school shootings and incidents of gun violence covered in the media never ceases to alarm us with all too familiar scenes of families and schools in the aftermath of a tragic and largely preventable incident. As gun sales surge, the issue of gun violence in schools continues to concern many people in our community, leaving many with feelings of helplessness. But we can take action together to help keep our schools safer. First, let me share some facts about gun violence in schools. In 2022, there were at least 177 incidents of gunfire on school grounds in the United States, resulting in 57 deaths and 148 injuries. In 2023 alone, there have been at least 44 incidents of gunfire on school grounds, resulting in 19 deaths and 33 injuries. Gun violence in schools include homicides, assaults, unintentional discharges, self-harm injuries, suicide attempts, and suicide deaths on school grounds, as well as the mass shootings we see on the TV. While mass shootings in schools are rare and account for less than 1% of school gunfire incidents, they account for 20% of gun deaths in schools in the last 10 years. All of the school-age shooters involved in mass shootings were current or former students. 96% in self-harm incidents and 91% in unintentional discharges of a gun were current or former students. So overall, 60% of school-age shooters were current or former students. In 100% of incidents of targeted school violence, there were warning signs that caused others to be concerned. And in 77% of incidents, other people were aware of the shooter's plans. Research suggests that 75% of shooters on school grounds under the age of 18 obtained the guns they used from their own homes or the homes of their relatives or friends. We know that the threat of gun violence at school negatively affects student learning, and we also know that gun violence disproportionately affects students of color. These facts suggest that we as a community need to do more to prevent the threat of gun violence among our students. Thank you.
Michelle Stapleton.
Hello, my name is Michelle Stapleton, and I'm a mother, grandmother, and retired school teacher from another district. But I'm concerned about the safety of all children, and I'm here specifically tonight about the safety of the students in the Linn-Mar district. Did you know that in 2020, firearm-related injuries became the leading cause of death among children and adolescents in the United States? Between 2019 and 2021, the number of gun deaths among children and adolescents in the United States increased by 50%. In Iowa, 62 school-aged youth died by suicide using a firearm between the years of 2015 and 2020. In Linn County, 8 youths died by suicide involving a firearm between 2013 and 2021. When youth attempt suicide with a firearm, they are more likely to complete the suicide as firearms provide a lethal means. Suicide ideation is increasing. 21% of 8th graders and 24% of 11th graders responding to the 2021 Iowa Youth Survey indicated experiencing thoughts of suicide in the previous 12 months. Gun violence among school-aged children is a safety concern for all of us. We can start addressing it by agreeing that everyone has a right to obtain and own a gun legally. We can also agree that it is an adult responsibility to ensure that all students feel emotionally and physically safe in school in order for them to learn and thrive. We know in recent years our schools have followed good practices on school safety by enhancing security features on their sites, outlining building safety plans and protocols, and providing additional support services to help students avoid dangerous choices and behaviors that can lead to violence. One study found in households that locked both firearms and ammunition, there was a 78% lower risk of self-inflicted firearm injuries and an 85% lower risk of unintentional firearm injuries among children and teens compared to those where guns and ammunition were readily available. The important takeaway here is that gun violence prevention is an adult responsibility that we all must share. Thank you.
Angie Wieland.
Hello, my name's Angie Weiland, and I am a Linn County resident and mother of school children. This is how the Be Smart message works. The current reality is that gun violence among school-aged children, whether at home or at school, is a school community issue that is not going away unless we as adults do as we can to prevent it. This is what the Be Smart program comes in. Be Smart is neutral on the topic of gun ownership. It also does not advocate for changes to gun laws. Rather, it emphasizes the power of each and every adult to take agency over the safety of children and teens. Be Smart has been cited by the National PTO as an effective way to prevent school gun violence. For the past several years, we have given well-received presentations of the Be Smart program to adult audiences in our community and PTOs in the district. Be Smart is a gun safety strategy for keeping students safe in 5 steps. S is for securing all guns in your home and vehicles. This does not mean keeping firearms hidden or out of reach. It means keeping guns locked and unloaded at all times. Remember, studies show most children know where firearms are stored. M is for modeling responsible behavior around guns. This includes secure, not hidden gun storage. A is for asking about the presence of unsecured guns in homes our children visit. R is for recognizing the role of guns in suicide. A recent study showed that 17% of high school students have seriously considered suicide, and 40% of adolescents and other students report living in homes with easy access to guns in their homes. This is important because of the increased danger of guns in any suicide attempt. And finally, T is for telling others about the Be Smart message.
Marcia Swift.
Thank you to the board for your time this evening. I am Marcia Swift. I'm a resident of Linn County. I had children who went through school in the Cedar Rapids School District, and I'm a member of the Cedar Rapids Area Moms Demand Action for Gun Safes. We are here tonight to ask the Linn-Mar School District to make it publicly known through a board resolution that the responsibility for gun safety is an adult responsibility and an expectation for all parents and guardians in our schools. While school staff members, law enforcement officers, and students all play a collective role in that responsibility, research shows the most important and effective responsibility for preventing gun violence lies with adult guardians to keep all firearms locked and unloaded in the home and in cars. According to the U.S. Secret Service, addressing student access to guns is a critical component of any school-based threat assessment intervention plan. Informing and educating parents and guardians that storing guns locked, unloaded, and separate from ammunition can be an important way to keep schools safer from gun violence. The key is secure gun storage in the home and in cars. Many school districts across the country have already implemented board resolutions like the one we suggest tonight, including districts in Michigan, Texas, California, Colorado, Pennsylvania, and Iowa. Last year, the Iowa City Community School District voted to implement the Be Smart resolution. These districts changed their handbooks and issued secure gun storage notification letters to all parents and guardians, informing them of this expectation. It's also important to note that Iowa is one of several states that has a child access prevention law in effect, enforcing legal liabilities on adults in cases involving the possession or use of an unsecured firearm in their possession by a minor. And many parents don't even know about this law. A board resolution informs parents and guardians of this legal obligation and the expectation that it is followed for school safety reasons. We have prepared packets for the board members with sample resolutions and models of the secure gun storage notification letters for parents that have been used in other districts, as well as more information about the Be Smart program. So we thank you very much for your time this evening, and we welcome any further conversation with board members about this important issue and our proposal.
Nessa Renaud.
Hey, Vanessa Reno. I'm here to read on behalf of Mar. Bear with me a second. Linn-Mar Community School District Board members, Superintendent Bisgard, and incoming Superintendent Quartermeyer, and Associate Superintendent Weir. Congratulations on your retirement, Bisgard. We extend our community's appreciation for your leadership and service to our students, families, staff, and in elevating Linn-Mar pride. In all your positions, you have served our community well with a commitment to building a strong public school system that benefits all of the students and our community. We are grateful for your guidance through some of the most trying times of dealing with a pandemic, a derecho, the politicization of our kids' well-being, and continued underfunding of our staff and schools. You have handled all of these things and more with consistent advocacy, grace, compassion, and a willingness to listen to the many staff and community perspectives and voices. We especially appreciate you and Associate Superintendent Weir's leadership in critical conversations with other school districts and within Linn-Mar, with community leaders, consultants, and advocates to focus on equitable outcomes for our children, staff, and district. Your support of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee shows a commitment to ensuring all students and staff are seen and heard and feel they belong. Superintendent Quartermeyer, we welcome you and look forward to your leadership as you will lead Linn-Mar in the continued path forward, ensuring our students and staff feel they can be supported to continue to excel, and that our families feel engaged to continue to build on Linn-Mar pride. We recognize you bring countless strengths, perspectives, and knowledge into this position, and we are excited to have you rejoining us in this next steps ahead. Thank you to the board for partnering with all of our district's leadership to ensure we are all working to promote a district that exemplifies an inclusive, equitable, and safe environment in our public schools where all feel they can belong. Sincerely, the Marion Alliance for Racial Equity Education Subcommittee. Thank you.
Anthony Arrington. Going once, going twice.
Left.
Alina Mansur.
Good evening, school board and community members. My name is Alina Mansour, and I'm a rising senior at Linn-Mar this upcoming school year. You may recognize me as one of the creators of the Bullying and Microaggression Forum that the Linn-Mar DE&I committee representatives mentioned in their recommendation. From a student perspective, DE&I is important to make people feel more welcome in our community. The DE&I committee's efforts to make our school district more inclusive have been making impacts that we feel firsthand. My peers and I made this forum because we noticed discrepancies in how certain events were being identified and dealt with, and we are so grateful to have such a cooperative and engaging community. Thank you to Dr. Gustafson, the DE&I committee, Mr. Ware, the school board, and Superintendent Bisgard for taking several students' work and using it to amplify student voices and needs by using our work in a way that directly contributes to our district. These student-staff collaborations are what make our school district feel like a community, and I hope to continue getting to work with the school board and Superintendent Courtmeyer this upcoming school year. Thank you.
Tiffany DeBow.
First, I'd like to say I'm a parent in the district, Tiffany DeBow. I want to say thank you to the DE&I committee for your presentation tonight. I knew you existed but didn't know much about what you did, so thank you so much for that. It was really, really inspiring and interesting, and I'm excited to see what else comes from it. Also, I want to take a second to thank you for what you mentioned about with the bus situation. I think parents understand the constraints that the board's under with budgeting, and you've got to do what you got to do, but thank you for looking for alternatives. I know, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s, so I was walking to school by myself when I was teeny tiny, but I was in a small town. There was no giant busy roads during rush hour traffic at 7:30 in the morning. So I think anything that the school can do, even if they reach out to, various PTOs to help coordinate those walking school buses and just see to make sure the kids are getting there safe. So thank you for looking into alternative options to try to all work together through this transition. The last thing I want to do is take a moment as just a member of the community to thank you, Superintendent Bisgard. I'm a newer parent in the district. My kids are still in elementary school, so I'm not as tapped in as some maybe, but in the 3 years that I've been paying attention to school board that my kids have been in school, it's been 3 rough years, and you have shown great calm, patience, leadership, and all good things in this district, and I'm looking forward to seeing how our new superintendent continues that, and thank you for your example leading during such difficult times, and then I wish you the very best in your retirement and that you enjoy your time ahead and what you've earned. Thank you.
That concludes audience communication, which which is why I asked Tiffany to go last, because that's a great segue into our final agenda item, which is our recognition of Shannon. Shannon does not want a party, and he doesn't want any fanfare, so.
I didn't even want this.
He didn't even want this.
Too bad.
We're, you know, Sandra and Clark went back and forth in my board email this morning about how we weren't going to do fanfare, and Clark said sometimes you don't get what you want, and then I've had that song in my head all day, but you get what you need, and sometimes what you need is to hear how appreciated you are. So, before I give you your gift from the board, Shannon in November will be recognized by IASB for an award of honor. As a superintendent, he has met all the criteria already 6 months into the year for his professional development and commitment to education. So they informed me, and I asked them if they could send it ahead of time since he won't be here in November. So first off, there is your award of honor as an outstanding educator dedicated to students. So yay, good job.
Thank you.
Now this is from the board, and we thank you. So, I'm gonna make you
Do I have to open it now as well, too?
Yes, of course.
As somebody that lives in the public world, I don't love the personal focus. Oops, I dropped
We decided to
something.
make this as awkward as possible for you.
I could have made it so much worse, but I listened, so.
Perfect. I said I was going to be staying connected and come back. Lifetime pass. Thank you. I will put that to use. So, any special order?
Yeah, do that one
This one? Last. Okay.
It's Clark's idea. I have to give him full credit for.
Can't get the wrapper open, but you can see it. Linn-Mar superintendent. And for those of you who don't know, I love to ride my bike, and that's really about the only plan I have in retirement, except to be a grandfather. So now I have a license plate for my bike. So.
Perfect.
I'll know it's you when I
Nice.
see you around town.
It's the only way you'll recognize me.
Athletics and one's fine arts.
Well, there we go. Athletics and fine arts pass. Get to do both. Well, show choir, get to come back and watch again next
that's
year.
right.
Fantastic.
Lifetime.
Watch us win again.
That's pressure. Not on me, but on them. So. There's a lot to read here, so I will take time to read that later. But I appreciate your sentiments and thoughts. So. But very nice plaque, and that will look fantastic at home. Well done.
And it says, may you be proud.
Be proud of the work you have done, the person you are, and the difference you have made. Thank you for your years of service, and congratulations on your retirement. We are Linn-Mar. So, thank you.
And that concludes putting Shannon on the spot. There are cupcakes to go, so he doesn't have to stand and eat cake with people. So,
I like people. I just want the spotlight. So, but thank you, everybody, very much. I do greatly appreciate your sentiments. Even though I don't love the spotlight, I do very much appreciate where you're coming from. Thank you very much. So.
Shannon, we appreciate you. I hope coming from a parent, first of all, from a parent that had my kids in your building when you were a principal.
Back when I was young.
Back in the old days when we were both young. I remember, you may not even remember this, but I remember crying in your office when my youngest son was struggling, and the support that you gave our family during those days. And then when you were my husband's supervisor, and I remember him saying, I've never doubted for a moment that Shannon would have my back. And I've always remembered that. And I think that every staff in this district would say those same words, that they've never doubted for a moment that you've had their back, and that you will continue to have their backs as an advocate for this district. Just because you're no longer going to be their superintendent does not mean that you will still not be out there supporting them in lots of ways, whether it's using those lifetime passes or whatever it might be. You have been a tremendous advocate and ally for the kids, the staff, and the families of this district. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciate you. Thank you.
I do remember that moment.
And the many more after that.
I've already said my words.
No,
last
no
week,
other words
so.
needed. I just want to make sure to acknowledge your guys' kindness and thoughtfulness. I very much appreciate it.
Right.
Everyone is good, then I will take a motion to adjourn at 6:29.
Moved.
Second.
Motion by Rachel and a second by Sandra. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 6:29, just make a note of that.